Just a note for listeners for Girls Matter. There is a portion within the interview where my guest talks a bit about sexual assault. And so I just want to give a disclaimer and a heads up for those of you who may feel a bit uncomfortable. Thank you. What does the phrase, education should be a right, not a privilege, mean to you? If you believe that access to education is not a privilege, but a right, as in being a human right, it's actually a human rights law that guarantees this, then why are 61 million children not in school, and most of them girls? Educating children, no matter where they are, is one of the biggest factors toward ending extreme poverty. Education is not a privilege. It is, in fact, a human right. Education as a human right means the right to education is legally guaranteed for all without any discrimination. Simply put, there is an obligation to protect, respect, and fulfill the right to education. Just to share a bit of background, international human rights law guarantees this right. The Universal Declaration on Human Rights was adopted in 1948 in Article 26. Everyone has the right to education. Since then, the right to education has been widely recognized and developed by a number of international normative instruments elaborated by the United Nations, including UNESCO, Convention Against Discrimination in Education 1960, the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights in 1966, and the Convention on the Rights of a Child in 1989, as late as 1989. It's hard to believe that. The right to education has also been reaffirmed in other treaties covering specific groups, women and girls, persons with disabilities, migrants, refugees, indigenous peoples, etc., and context, which is also really interesting, education during armed conflicts. So it really is a significant legal human right. It has also been incorporated into various regional treaties and enshrined as a right in the vast majority of national constitutions. What I find so interesting about this is that there are laws, in fact, to protect the rights to education, although we are often globally failing to fulfill this right, but there are actually no laws to protect the kind of education offered. In some cases, as in the US, there was an attempt in 2001 with the No Child Left Behind Act, signed into federal law in 2002, aimed at improving primary and secondary education, which in many cases reduced rich curricula into rote standards where schools were evaluated. This changed slightly in 2015, where states had more leeway in determining their evaluative criteria, but it certainly didn't address the issue of quality. There still remains a huge divide in the US with the quality of education. We know girls suffer more statistically in terms of their access to learning that aids in their potential to both better themselves and their communities. I've always believed that it's far better to have an educated society, as it creates good competition and offers the likelihood that individuals will be self-sustaining and will then improve the larger collective. Girls do matter, and that became the charge of an incredible organization called Girls Matter, as well as a friendship between the three founders, Melissa Deely, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but she'll tell me in a minute, Malcolm Trivena, and Megan Alvarez, that brought that dream into a reality in 2017. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social enterprises under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Small and Gutsy is not just a podcast, but a 501c3 nonprofit. Our vision is to spotlight every smaller nonprofit and social enterprise to raise their visibility. So please help me with our vision and send me any organization you'd like featured at laura@smallandgutsy.org. Girls Matter celebrates girls by increasing their access, which includes financial support to high school and post-secondary education in developing countries. Their vision is to support the education of girls in these countries, which will in turn increase the respect, visibility, and equality for girls in their communities. Their three key program areas are: educate girls to complete high school, in select cases considering educating girls to complete university; support girls to attend classes all year long by providing menstrual pads. Currently, they regularly miss 1 week of class per month without this support. And the third is through education, reducing the number of teenage marriages and teenage moms. Just to give you some statistics, there are over 100 million young women in low and lower middle income countries who are unable to read a single sentence. If developing countries were to educate just 1% more girls, the GDP or gross domestic product would improve by billions of dollars. A child born to a literate mother is 50% more likely to survive past the age of 5. Educated mothers are more than twice as likely to send their children to school, ensuring that their own girls are educated, creating a positive ripple effect for generations to come. A girl with an extra year of education can earn 20% more as an adult. Educating girls will break the poverty cycle. I want to share with you one thing I read off of Girls Matter website that I was there were many things, but one in particular that I was so impressed with. As a recipient, a woman named Evelyn Koala, and I may not pronounce her name correctly, who graduated from fashion and design school, shared, "Your support has pushed me to another level. I can see my future is going to be good. Girls Matter has really changed my life, taking me from being illiterate to literate." And I would imagine is she's now able to support herself and sustain herself. Their holistic approach supports the girls in their communities in both Uganda and Kenya. Their motto is breaking the poverty cycle, one girl, one family, one village at a time. I just love that. It sort of gives me chills when I read that, and now that when I said it as well. In developing countries, education comes at a cost. Families are caught in a quandary, torn between investing in schooling and affording essential needs. When affording necessity becomes a challenge, daughters are often married off, passing the responsibility of feeding them to a man they don't know or love, and they're often very young. In a single year, an estimated 150 million girls are victims of sexual violence. 14 million girls under 18 will be married this year, 38,000 today, and 13 girls in the last 30 seconds. Take that in for a moment. It's unbelievable. The number one cause of death for girls 15 to 19 is childbirth. So these are all ways that this organization is impacting young women's lives. I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Melissa Deely, co-founder of Girls Matter. Melissa's own adventurous spirit led her to Africa, where she witnessed firsthand the global disparities in educational access. She was destined to make a meaningful impact. Having been a Girl Guide leader, a mother of 2 girls, as well as being inspired by the documentary Girls Rising, unveiling the uphill battle 9 girls faced in their fight for education, Melissa, together with friends Malcolm and Megan, began their impact in Uganda, and they have continued to expand that impact, and in 2021 began working in Kenya as well. Melissa actually had her own epiphany moment, which she will tell you about in a moment herself. I didn't want to spoil that because I thought it was really interesting when I read about it, and I'm so very honored to welcome Melissa. So let's get started. I'd love to hear that aha moment that's on your website, but I'd love to hear it from you. So let's get started. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm so happy to be here. And I really know what you mean when you say you got the goosebumps of breaking the poverty cycle, one girl, one family, one village at a time, because that was downloaded to me, that phrase. And even as you said it, I got the goosebumps. And it's been 7 years of using that phrase, and yet it hits me to the core every single time. Because this work that we're doing, while not easy, it's the answer. The solution is so simple. Just educate the other half of the girls. And that was my epiphany moment, was when I took my Girl Guides, and in the US you call them Girl Scouts, to see that documentary Girls Rising. And that was back in 2013. And we were watching it. And as I watched it, I literally had tears streaming down my face, listening to the stories of these girls that were desperate for an education and being denied it simply because they were girls, and not even necessarily by their parents. They were being denied it by the schools and being told, you can't come and sit in class here with the boys because you're a girl. And there was nothing more to it than that. Or the stories of girls that were being married off at 5 years old to men in their 50s, and those girls becoming slaves to those men and being told their place is in the home, and no, you don't get to go and have an education. And it was just so heartbreaking to watch this. And as you mentioned, I traveled to Africa. I'm very fortunate. I've traveled in third world countries a lot of my life, and I've seen the poverty. It wasn't until I saw those 9 stories all in one documentary that I realized just how much girls were being denied an education. And in that moment, I knew I had to do something because I was sitting there with 20 plus local girls, my own 2 daughters included, realizing that every single one of us in the room had faked being sick at some point to avoid going to school. And we would talk about, oh, I have to go to school today, right? And I just realized this is so wrong. Those of us that have the privilege of going to school take it for granted. And yet there's millions of girls around the world desperate to go to school and being denied the opportunity. And I knew right then that I needed to do something about that. I had no idea what, I had no idea how, but I knew that that was a part of my mission here on Earth. And I took that away. And like I said, I didn't even know how to start. And I was still in the corporate world at the time. I really didn't have the time to take on something else. And so it just kind of circulated in the back of my mind. And once I got let go from the corporate world and I started my own business, I started attending conferences for my own personal growth. And at the end of 2016, in December 2016, I attended a conference where the speaker said, we are all placed on this planet to do 3 things: never stop learning, find our passion, and be of service to others. And then he said, you don't have to know your how, you just have to know your why. And all of that really resonated with me. In fact, I don't remember a single other thing that was said at that conference. That resonated. And I knew right then and there, I know my why. And I just need to start talking about it and sharing it with other people. And then the resources will fall into place. And so I left that conference and I called the only other 2 people that I knew that had ever started a nonprofit organization in British Columbia, Canada. And that was my co-founders, Malcolm and Megan, a husband and wife team. And I asked them, can you teach me how to start a nonprofit? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I told them that I want to help educate girls because when we educate the girls, as you've already mentioned, we grow the GDP of a nation. We can bring these countries out of poverty.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they said, you know what? We want to do it with you. And they already had nonprofits set up in Uganda and one in Nepal that was building preschools for young children so that they could learn their 1, 2, 3s and their ABCs at a younger age. So when they got into the elementary schools, which are severely overcrowded, that they wouldn't fall through the cracks and come out illiterate. And many kids do, unfortunately, because the classrooms are so
Mm-hmm.
crowded.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we have the staff teaching
Right.
at the nursery schools. So we can just piggyback Girls Matter on top of the nursery schools and we provide education at both ends because the kids do get access to elementary education, all children in the countries we're working in. And now we're providing the opportunity for preschools. And then we're providing the opportunity through Girls Matter to continue the education into high school and in some cases university. And so it was beautiful because I was literally able to complete all the government paperwork required to get all of our nonprofit status. And we launched the next month in January of 2017 with staff on the ground. And that's the really important piece is working with the staff on the ground, the teachers in the schools that know all of the children in the village that have had the girls go through their elementary school, that can make recommendations to us of the girls that need support because their families are struggling and the girls are, potentially going to be married off, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls that have the acumen to go through high school and vocational school or university. And we don't sit here thinking we know what they need. We ask them, what do you need? And then we act on that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful relationship. And as you mentioned, we started in Uganda And then in 2021, through another networking organization I was in, the founder of that organization introduced me to a nonprofit in Nairobi, Kenya called the Jolly Sisters, Jali Sisters, and they support the women in Nairobi slum and teach them how to create an income by running a market stall, by sewing the menstrual supplies that the girls and women need, by doing artwork that can be sold online to the Western world, etc. And so we've partnered with them to support the daughters of those mothers in keeping them in school. And unfortunately, as you mentioned too, there's a very high stat of these girls in developing countries being raped. And the girls that we are currently supporting in Kenya, there's 18 of them, and they're all in different schools, etc. There's some overlap. All of them have unfortunately been raped, and we're trying to help them get their lives back to some level of normalcy and where they can be safe, because in school they're safe. They're certainly safer than if they're just out in the streets. And in the villages, not so much the slums, in the villages, the girls that aren't in school are sent off into the woods every day to collect wood for the fires because they're cooking their meals in great big pots over open fires. And unfortunately, the men know the girls are going to be off in the woods during the day collecting wood. And so that's a very high risk time for the girl.
Right. So there's an opportunity.
Yes. Yes. So keeping them in school serves multiple benefits for the girls. And what I think people don't realize in North America, where we have a public school system that is free, and yes, there's a private school system for those who want to pay. Every child in North America has the right to an education through that public school system. And yes, absolutely, it could be better. The quality of education could be improved. However, every child has the right to go to school. In third world countries, once you get through elementary school, there is a cost. And so families that, are struggling to feed their children already can't necessarily come up with the money. It isn't a lot to us here in North America. However, it's a lot for them. And what we're able to do is send the girls to boarding school, which includes for about $1,500 a year. They get the whole school year, they get their uniform, they get their accommodation, they get all of their meals, they get their medical supplies, they get their mosquito nets, their textbooks, everything is included for $1,500 a year.
It's amazing, right? Comparatively. Although you're in Canada and we're in the US, but it's really amazing. You probably don't know this, but I had done a bit of work in Uganda myself. And what you're saying is absolutely accurate. The only way out for these young girls, and again, it's post-elementary because that's covered. And so to identify girls who then they have to take an entrance exam. If they don't pass it, they don't get into the secondary program anyway. Then if you get into the secondary program, right, then you have to pay for it. And so it becomes a system that alienates an entire, not only, an entire groups of young women who are desperate to go to school because they know deep down it is their only way out.
Absolutely.
I love the idea that you're partnering with existing organizations on the ground. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're capitalizing on people who know how to work their system, and you're providing a level of support that they absolutely need. They're desperate to get that kind of support. I have to go back and comment. Your epiphany is beautiful and it's heartwarming. And I love that you went to a conference where you knew deep down what your why. You knew your why, and you thought, if I know my why, and this is a message to everybody out there in the nonprofit sector, if you know your why, you'll figure out the rest because your why drives you. And I think that's paramount for even the for-profit, but particularly in the nonprofit sector, because the why is questioned on a regular basis by donors, by paperwork, by everything, right? But you're very clear, and I love that.
Focus on the why and the resources will come. I just have to start speaking this out loud to other people, to the universe, and it will fall into place.
Right. That's why we do small and gutsy. That's
Exactly.
why we do small and gutsy, to help vocalize what you're doing. And I think you're actually our first podcast organization. You're our first organization located in Canada. We have a few that they're always here, but we did one in Bhutan, in South America, in Africa. So welcome to the small and gutsy family.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
So
That's beautiful. I love
yeah,
that.
so we hope to help with the mouthpiece part of what you're trying to do,
Hmm.
and get more people to realize this effort is not that expensive, and it is an incredible thing that happens for these young women who then can have lives that are sustainable for themselves and their communities. And I do think raises the entire community up.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. Integral to our program is having somebody who wants to sponsor a girl, through high school, through university. And we are a very small organization. So we have a lot of contact with our girls when they're at home in the villages. They don't get to have their phones at school. So we have very little contact when they're away at school. However, we get video updates, we get their report cards, and you get those firsthand messages from the girls. Now, the easiest way, so we do have a website, obviously, girlsmatter.ca, and people can go there and donate. They can set up a subscription donation if you wanted to just donate $10 a month every month. What's that these days? Here in Canada, one chai tea latte at Starbucks, depending where you go, is $7, right? So can you forego a Starbucks and a muffin, your $10 Starbucks cost, once a week,
Right.
or sorry, once a month, so that you can donate it to Girls Matter and set that up as a subscription donation. And you do get an immediate tax receipt from that. You can also go in at the end of the year and download all your donations to use in your tax return. And I understand that Americans can actually use Canadian tax receipts in your taxes, which is beautiful because it doesn't work the other way around. It does work to your benefit. And then the other way, if you want to sponsor a girl, I for that, I would recommend that you email me at info@girlsmatter.ca and let me know your interest. And we have girls waiting for sponsors. We have two girls right now, in fact. And we send you their profiles, and then you can select the girl that you would like to support that most aligns with you. And for those payments, you still do pay it through the site. However, we take them in like either lump sum for the year, depending how you want to do it, or three payments per year, one per term for their schooling, so that we have the money and time to be able to send it over so that they can continue with their schooling.
And you send it
We
directly.
send it directly to the schools through our staff. So the money does not go to the families, right?
Perfect.
As much as this sounds awful to say, if it goes to the families, then it can end up being used for other purposes and the girls still don't get to go to school. So we send it to our staff, who
Right.
then
Right.
physically take it to the schools, and we get the receipts from the schools showing that the money's been paid and the girls get to go to school. The schools are very strict in terms of payment, unfortunately. If we've been paying for a girl, say for, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, and we're late in sending the payment over one time, and this happened earlier this year, just the way the holidays fell, the time it takes to transfer funds, you'd think everything's instantaneous, and yet it isn't, right? And so, for me to withdraw the funds from our bank with where we do all the banking to get those tax receipts, and then send it over to Africa, that can take 5 or 6 business days. And, depending where Christmas and Boxing Day and New Year's Day, all of that fell, we were a few days late. Unfortunately, we'd hoped it would happen more quickly. It didn't. Those girls cannot go to school at all until the payment comes in. So they missed a couple of days of school at the beginning of the year. So now I've, moved everything up even further in the hopes that, okay, we're going to pay the money to the schools in the beginning of December so we don't have that happen again, rather than mid-December, because then it just all ran late this year. So that's the best way if you would like to sponsor a girl, is literally email me at info@girlsmatter.ca and express your interest, and then we
Right.
can send you profiles of the girls and you can select the girl or girls that you would like to sponsor. and you still get the tax receipt for that.
Do you ever have, because you were a Girl Guide, and there are organizations and there are schools, I'm sure, in Canada, because I see this all the time with there's a sister school in another country or there's a relationship. I wonder if you've gone down the path of thinking, would an organization or a school in Canada or even in the US, since this is going to be everywhere, hopefully now, would be able to sponsor a few girls from a village.
And so that is something that we are trying to set up right now. It cannot be done through Girl Guides. Unfortunately, Girl Guides mandate is that any fundraising they do can only be used for Girl Guides. I tried that when we first started. We have had, yeah, we have had an organization which everybody will be familiar with, Rotary, and they have a youth program called Interact. And our local Interact students actually sponsored one of our girls for 5 years, which was an amazing experience for all of them. And so they were high school students themselves who developed the life skills of being able to plan fundraising events, execute those fundraising events, advertise those fundraising events, communicate with each other in a team in order to pull this off, while fundraising to keep one girl to have her finish grade 10 and 11 and 12 plus her 3 years of university. So she was only a couple years older than these kids that were running these events. And it was just such a beautiful thing. They would do videos for each other and send them back and forth. The Interact kids want to go over
Wonderful.
at some point and visit the village and meet Penina, who they sponsored. And the Rotary adults kept saying to me, you have no idea how this is benefiting our children here. And
Yeah.
it's so important for children here to understand how fortunate they are and how kids halfway around the world have so much less and yet are still happy.
It's wonderful what you're saying. So I took two of my four kids on a trip when I was doing work in Uganda for a nonprofit, and we sponsored the kids in that particular organization were not allowed. They were unfortunately children who had been orphaned due to HIV and AIDS, which was rampant and still is less so, but certainly was when I was there. And so they could not compete in soccer clubs, which is a big sport in Uganda. And so we raised money and did uniforms, and two of my kids went over, and I did the work aspect, and they played soccer with the kids who were there. And they had an amazing experience, and they were welcomed in, and to me, they had a wonderful experience because people would call them Mazungu means white, you probably know. And so my kids were like, we don't identify people by the color of their skin. My kids are brought up in the Boston area, very liberal. And I said, yes, but they're not doing it as an insult. It's really but for you to understand that for them, and my kids I don't think particularly look that much alike, but they called them twins and thought they looked exactly alike. And I said, this is what you have to understand that people of color in our country have experienced. So it was a wonderful learning experience, and that's what you're talking about. Not only the poverty that they saw, and that also my kids wanted to take off their shoes at cleats and socks and play. And I said, no, you can't. You'll get ringworm. And the other kids were playing barefoot because they were used to it. So it was such a cultural exchange. And so you're talking about not only appreciation, but a cultural exchange. And also to see kids are kids. Kids just want to be kids, and they want to learn given the opportunity. And so when you provide that, they really can and want to be contributors to their own lives and their own families and their own communities. And that's what you're offering in a beautiful way. And you're offering something to kids in your host country, in the host country. And that I think needs to be articulated even more strongly, because there have to be more schools and groups who would like that kind of exchange cultural experience. And what a perfect setup you have to do that.
Yes, and I fully agree. And it's definitely something that we've been reaching out to schools locally, more the private schools, because they do have programs to support nonprofits, and then it looks great on college applications, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
If there's any any teachers, any parents that would like to bring this into your school, please let us know, because so far the ones we've reached out to have said, while we love what you're doing, we are already aligned with 2 or 3 different organizations.
Yeah.
And so we would love to find that school that, maybe they're looking for one additional organization to add, or maybe this is a new program they're looking to build into their school, because there is so much that we can do and so much that our children can learn from this type of partnership. And as I said earlier, I was very fortunate. I traveled a lot as a child and I got to see the world. And to me, that is such a huge part of our education. It's not just what we learn in the classroom, it's being
Right.
exposed to other cultures, as you're talking about, other ways of living. And that's also why I became a girl guide leader, because I had 2 girls, and just through that program, I took girls to New York City. I took girls to Europe. I've, taken girls on many camps and trips where they're engaging with girls from all around the world. And it's so important because it breeds tolerance, it breeds understanding, it breeds curiosity. And kids recognize that we're all human. It doesn't matter the color of our skin. We all have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 arms, 2 legs. We're all human. And let's connect as humans, heart to heart, and support one another. And amazing friendships develop from this. And so, yes,
I
I
love
love
that.
that suggestion. And it's definitely a path that we are going down and very interested in developing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's so worthwhile for all the reasons that you shared. Are there about how many, if you can estimate, how many girls have gone through their schooling because of your support? Have you captured any of that information?
It's actually all on our website. Our girls are featured. And I know in Kenya, we're supporting 18 girls right now. In
It's
Uganda,
great.
over time, I would say we've supported at least 10 in high school. We've now had 4 university graduates as well, and plus Evelyn. So we've had one girl just literally, she hasn't had her graduation ceremony yet, but she finished university last month. So that's super exciting
So
as a
great.
teacher. Evelyn, who you mentioned earlier, Thanking Girls Matter, she did vocational school. So during COVID, she previously had a different sponsor. And during COVID, that sponsor said, I can't afford to support you anymore. So our staff on the ground came to us and said, Evelyn's family is asking if you can support her to finish high school and go on to university. And that wasn't in our budget. We didn't have our funding. However, we said, okay, let's see what we can do, but it's going to be on a year-by-year basis right now because I don't have an actual sponsor for her at this time. Partway through that first year, her family came back to us, as did Evelyn, and said, you know what, let's make this easier on you guys. I'm going to go to vocational school instead. And so that meant she wouldn't be going to university, and she would instead, for vacational school, spend grade 11 and 12 learning a skill. And so she became a seamstress. And that meant we only supported her for 2 years of her education to finish that, rather than also needing to come up with money for university. So it was a win-win on our strapped budgets, right? Unfortunately, money's always tight. The beautiful thing about all of this is that she finished her schooling last December, because their school year is from February to December. She made, if you go on the website, you can scroll through and see the pictures. She made all of the little graduation gowns and caps for the preschoolers of the village that they'd never had before.
Amazing.
They are the most adorable photos. These kids are just smiling from ear to ear. And those caps and gowns can be put away and used year after year after year.
Every year. Yeah, it's great. It's amazing.
The win for the community, because of what we've done for Evelyn, there's a big win. Once she finished schooling, though, she didn't have access to a sewing machine anymore. So we've actually now moved into microfinancing our graduates who are trying to start a business.
Love it.
So we loaned money to her so she could buy a sewing machine.
Perfect.
And then we heard from the staff on the ground, because we were asking for photos of the girls for updates for sponsors and things. And a lot of their clothing was really stained, torn, just not in good shape. And one of our board of directors is a lady from Nigeria who lives in Texas. And beautiful, beautiful woman, Dr. M. And she is our mentor for the girls. because she's lived their dream,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she came to me and she said, looking at these photos, it would be really nice if we could have every girl in the village could have a new dress. At the same time, the teaching staff were asking us, can you collect clothes and ship them over to us? And it would be very easy to collect clothes. Shipping them over would be astronomical. And as we looked into it more, and I talked to Malcolm and Megan, who have more experience, as well as another nonprofit that I'm connected with, they all said don't ship them over because unfortunately there's so much corruption. The customs officers would open the box, see all this North American clothing, and go, "Ooh, I can sell this myself for money," and the clothes would never get to the girls.
Yeah, so it's true.
So what we
Mhm.
decided to do instead was we asked Evelyn to draw up some sketches of some dresses that she could make to give us a budget. And we are now financing Evelyn to make the clothes for the girls in the
I
village.
love it.
So we're starting her business. She's now earning an income. And not only that, all the girls will be wearing her clothing. So
To
other people
advertise.
who see exactly to advertise her
Mm-hmm.
skill set in making these dresses. Now, obviously, making that many dresses is going to take several months. So we're sending the money over in, over 3 payments. So again, there's not too much money at once. And having her do this, basically for a project to the end of the year.
It's fabulous. What a great total 360 circle. Like it's just a great way
Yes,
to have supported her. Now she's supporting other people, she's supporting herself, and she's learning, how to run a business basically. And then you've got little
yes,
marketers walking around in her clothing.
exactly,
I
exactly.
love it.
And then
It's
we have
great.
another graduate who wants to open a store closer to the village where she can be curating products that don't have all of the bribery add-on prices of getting them to her and then to her village. And so that's the next project that we want to finance. We just need more funds to come in order for us to be able to again loan her the money so that she can start the store. And what we've done with Dr. M being our mentor and a business coach out of Toronto, Dr. James Burgess, he gave us his business plan workbook
Perfect.
and he
Mm-hmm.
branded it Girls Matter along with his branding. And so we have these girls. So Evelyn and Jane have completed this whole business plan workbook through the guidance of Dr. M so that we could look at the numbers and go, does this make sense? Because we don't have enough money to just throw it around and say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, go for it. We want to know that it's actually going to make sense and they can actually make something of this. And so that also is a learning process for the girls. And then Jane is amazing. She was our first graduate and she goes back to the village and she helps the elders in the village who are illiterate complete government documents and forms, etc., so that, now they might need to open a bank account. Things are changing and they're coming into the present time too, or maybe they want to get a cell phone. Their cell phones aren't smartphones, they're the old flip phones, but maybe they want a cell phone. And to fill out the paperwork in order to be able to get that, they can't do it without somebody's support. And so that's something that Jane does on a regular basis, which is another beautiful way that the educated girl can be giving back to the community. And as those loans get paid back, the money isn't coming back to us in Canada. The money is staying in Uganda to fund another girl's semester of school, right? So whoever donates towards that microfinance in the moment now, know that your money is then going to support a girl's education later on because it's just being recycled.
And I said this earlier, but I can't express it enough that you really came in with the mindset that people on the ground who are doing work already know what they're doing. They just need extra support, and you'll work with them to figure that out because they know what they need. They just need the guidance and help and financial support to actually make that happen. So it's a beautiful collaboration that you've created. And I can't say enough good things about what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And another example of that too is, as I said earlier, we partnered with Meaningful Volunteer that supports the preschool, right? And Girls Matter's main mission, as you've said, is to support the girls' education, keep them in school with menstrual supplies, and stop teenage marriages. And then there's been all of these spin-offs, right? The dresses aren't just for the girls. We're funding their education. It's for the whole community. And something else that we did for the whole community recently that is so important, we partnered with Meaningful Megan because the preschool obviously needs somewhere a latrine, a bathroom for the kids to go to school, right? And it's an outhouse. And there, because of flooding this spring, and it had been about 10 years since the outhouse had been built, the outhouse actually collapsed and the hole in the ground imploded. And so it became a huge safety concern for young children falling in the hole. And secondly, just the school can't remain open, the preschool, without a latrine, right? And so we had to pull money together very quickly to build a new one. And Meaningful Volunteer didn't have enough money to do the whole thing. And so we partnered with them in order to support the community and sent over the funds in order to build a new latrine building. And it was built very quickly. We got videos of every step of the process. And my goodness, this was hard work. There was men with like big pickaxes having to dig into clay. Imagine how hard that work is in the hot African sun. It was built in 2 weeks, and the school obviously had to shut down for that time. Then it was able to reopen. And it's so important for the community because the schoolhouse is still a community building. And so it's not just for the 3 to 5 year olds that are using that latrine. The community, when they're in that community building, are using it. And so it's more than just educating the girls. It is also supporting the community as much as we can while staying true to our mission and our vision. And I will say I have been asked if we will support boys. And as hard as it is to say no, I have to say no. That funding needs to come from somewhere else because we really want to support the girls. That's what we're all about, and ensure that the girls are getting access to the education that they are so often denied.
I mean, there may be obviously all the kids in the preschool when you collaborate, but that's a collaboration on a specific project. And I love that
Yes.
you're open to doing that because it does make a difference for the kids who are there. And I really appreciate you have to stay true to your mission. It's how you started, it's your big why. And the minute you deviate, because everything you've talked about is still in line with your mission, it still meets that goal.
Yes.
And so I think there will be other collaborations in the future that you'll make a decision as an organization with your board to decide how do we want to do this or whether we want to do this. But I'm sure you've been approached, can you help the boys? But there are other organizations, and frankly, the inequity for girls, as I pointed out statistically, you certainly have on your website, is enormous. And that gap is quite wide and will take a very long time, generations, to really bring it a little bit closer together. Are there any, and I hate to highlight one or two, but I'd love to ask is, are there any sort of aha moments for you or a story of an individual that you just thought it was going to work this way, worked that way, something that was sort of like, wow, I hadn't thought about that, or this was really amazing? Any of that would be interesting, I think.
Well, there's a few things there. And one of them is that when we were asked to provide menstrual supplies, at that time, I personally hadn't realized the girls were missing a week of school every month. They don't have anything. They use rags and they don't leave home. If they're in boarding school and they don't have supplies, they're staying in their room. And we learned about that post-COVID. And we kind of put it in perspective. Like we all had to experience lockdowns for a varying amount of times, depending where we lived. And then it was over and we all, didn't like it while it happened. That's basically what these girls experience for a week of every month for 40 years of their lives. So it's not just the girls and the women, right? Imagine if that was your life. Like we in North America, our menstrual cycle doesn't slow us down any way, shape, or form once we get the hang of it when we're 11 or 12 or 13 or whatever, right? It doesn't slow us down. We don't, we may grumble about it and be happy when it's over. However, it doesn't slow us down. It doesn't stop us from doing anything. Their world for 1 week of every month comes to a grinding halt. Imagine if that was you. What would your life look like? Exactly. And not to mention, they are at school with boys as
It's
well.
hard to play catch up.
So the
Right.
boys go to school every day of the month and the girls miss a week every month. Well, now they have to play catch up. The teachers don't give them any grace for that. So they're being graded in their school marks against the
Mm-hmm.
boys who have 25% more
Right.
education for every test and every exam they have to write. So when we were asked and when we learned this and understood this and we were asked to provide menstrual supplies, again, there's many amazing organizations in North America that do this. However, the cost of shipping it all over didn't make sense. And I wanted to know, how can we support the local economy? Through our local Rotary Club who support their youth supported Penina, I was connected to the next town over's Rotary Club. They invited me to come and speak to them, and I did. And they said, did you know that our club built a manufacturing plant in Uganda to make reusable, washable menstrual supplies? And I said, no, I had no idea. And they said, let's connect you. So we purchased from them, supporting the Rotary there, all the employees in the manufacturing plant. They were gracious enough to deliver them to our
Yeah.
village at a reasonable, very reasonable cost for how far they had to drive. It was like a 24-hour return drive. And we were able to supply 400
Mm-hmm.
girls with menstrual supplies. And now we're trying to raise funds to do that again. The supply, they get a kit bag and it lasts about a year. And so we're now due to do that again. And in Kenya, what we did was we provided the funding to Jolly Sisters, who then purchased the raw materials. And then the mothers who are needing a job, they sewed them for their community and earn an income in doing so from the funding that we provided. So we're creating jobs basically in the local economies rather than using all of the, beautiful organizations in North America that will donate. It doesn't support the local economy. And that's what we need to do. So the two other projects that are in our pipeline that again were a little bit of an aha. One of them I referred to earlier, talking about the girls having to go out and collect wood for cooking, for the fires for the cooking pots. So there's a couple of organizations that I've now discovered that create almost, like a tea cozy that you put around the teapot to keep the tea hot. They've created something similar for the big cooking pots that they use in Africa so that you don't have to make as many fires a day. And if you make the breakfast meal, it can stay warm for lunch, right?
Interesting.
So that is a win because then we don't have the girls having to go
Fabulous.
into the woods
Mm-hmm.
to collect as much wood. Everybody in the community isn't inhaling as much smoke, so it's better for their health. Time-wise, they can do something else because they're not constantly building and stoking fires. I love to camp in the outdoors. And when you think about going camping, how much time is spent,
Mm-hmm.
starting the fire and cooking the meal and cleaning, eating the meal and cleaning up from the meal, and then you're all done and you're like, oh, look, it's almost time to start lunch now, right? And so it gives them time in between because they don't have to keep building fires. So that's another project we want to raise funds for, is to be able to provide each
Mm-hmm.
family with a cozy for their cooking pot.
Great.
And then the other one is electricity. Again, something we take
Mm-hmm.
completely for granted. Now, the preschool is there's 5 community buildings in the village that we work with in Uganda, and the only one that has electricity is the preschool because we have a couple of solar panels on the preschool that Meaningful Volunteer raised funds for. So it's where everybody charges their cell phones, and it's the only place they can congregate after dark. They have 4 other buildings that we would also like to provide electricity for. So one of them is their clinic. There's no electricity in their medical clinic, right?
Wow.
And again, it's
Mm-hmm.
not super expensive to do this. I've found a company called Empower to Transform, and they provide basically transformers that bring electricity using solar panels to buildings. And so that's another project that we are raising funds for so that we can provide the electricity. And that's been asked for from Uganda. And when we have the funds for that, will also offer it to the Jolly Sisters. I don't know if that's a need that they have in the slums in Nairobi. Possibly, I don't know. Again, we'll always ask. But those are some other projects in our pipeline that we're wanting to raise funds for.
Is the organization that does the solar panels, are they within the country? Is that an organization that exists within the country or outside?
So it's actually the fellow that I connected with is also in Canada. To be honest, I don't know if it's a Canadian or an American company that he works through, but yes, they have people on the ground to go in and help with the installation
There.
and the education around caring for it. It's very easy, but they do an installation program so that the community knows how to use it, etc.
That's great. Yeah. And then again, it's a collaboration
Exactly.
and you have to go where the resource is.
Exactly.
And so I love that because again, it's creating an opportunity for these buildings to serve multi purposes or for the clinic to be open longer or for there to be better access in
Exactly.
general. So that's great. That's a great project. So, toward the end of the podcast, we always ask a round of quick and gutsy questions. They're fun. They're sometimes pearls of wisdom, but they're really about being a little reflective about your organization, which you've done a beautiful job of sharing so many aspects of it that I don't think people would naturally know, even initially looking at your website. So, I'm so glad that again, I think you should be recognized for your ability, your collective ability, your board members, your co founders to pivot, to go deeper, to find out where are the barriers or blockages and work through them, to collaborate when needed, all to benefit these young women who then give back and are part of a bigger community. So I need to sort of sum that piece up because it's quite telling about you as an individual and how you started this with two other folks and your drive.
Well, thank you very much.
So, are you ready?
I am.
Of course. Thank you. Okay. So, what is at the top of your wish list for Girls Matter? However, the answer can't be money or funding. It's always a hard one.
For somebody to share with me, that was money though. I was going to say grant opportunity.
I know. That's why it's kind of tricky, right? So, what's at the top of your wish list?
For every person that listens to this podcast to share it with at least two people in your life and ask them to listen to it.
That's great.
And have a conversation around it because then you know they've listened to it and just open the dialogue.
Right. Open the dialogue. Hopefully that leads to something, which we won't talk about because we're not talking about money, but it leads to education and awareness. If you were to think of a song that describes Girls Matter or signifies or could be, kind of your tagline song, what would it be?
It is a song by Shania Twain that I think it's called Just a Girl or Like a Girl. It came out last year on her most recent album. I'm just looking on my phone right now because I have her album on my phone. And I've actually, if anybody, this is another wish, if anybody knows how I can connect directly with Shania Twain, I've been trying to do that, to ask her for permission to use this song
as your theme song.
As the theme song, I would love to know how I can do that. I think it's called Just a Girl, and it's a beautiful song. Oh, not just a girl.
Not just a girl.
Not just a girl. It's called.
That's great. I love it. That's great. Okay, so that was a request out there. I love it. What makes Girls Matter gutsy? How is Girls Matter gutsy? Because you are, for sure.
I think we are gutsy because I looked around when I realized I wanted to help girls, and I looked around at other organizations that already existed. And I chose to start my own because I chose to build something on a template of 100% of the money gets to the girls. And our philosophy is all the money goes to the girls. We appreciate your donation, and we're not going to use valuable money to send you a gift back. You donated the money because you wanted to support the girls, not because you needed a kitchen scrubbing brush or a gift card or an address label. And so, we're gutsy because we choose to do things differently and because we're open to evolving and growing and changing. It literally started as paying for a girl's 1 year of high school because, as you said at the very beginning, each additional year of high school increases their salary by 20%. And we've grown into some girls graduating from university and microfinancing and supporting girls in building their businesses by making dresses for the community and supporting the latrine and looking to do more projects for the community. So because we are small, we have the opportunity to shift in our outlook and to do new things that we hadn't thought about when we started, all still within the alignment of our vision.
What is something that outsiders or maybe even a few insiders don't know about Girls Matter?
First of all, outsiders, many, millions, billions don't know we exist.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
And so thank you for helping to bring that number down and
You're
have more
welcome.
people know that we exist. If they do know we exist, they've probably learned a lot in this podcast because they potentially didn't know about how we have pivoted in the last year and created, added new projects. They, may not know the entire history of how we got started. In terms of insiders, I think the insiders really do know everything about us. Maybe there's one or two golden nuggets they would learn from this podcast. We do have a newsletter that goes out to insiders, and if people want to sign up for the newsletter, you can do that on our website, info@girlsmatter.ca. We don't spam your inbox. That newsletter goes out, maybe every 2 months, and just with updates on, what project we've completed or supported. There'll be another one coming out soon. I'm waiting for Evelyn to send photos of the first few dresses that she's made, and then I'll send out another newsletter. And so people who are getting our newsletter are largely in the know of who we are, what we're doing. And there is information on the website too about the Girls Rising documentary, and the trailer for that is on the website. You can also Google it. And I highly recommend everybody, it's a 2-minute trailer. Go watch that trailer. I can't get through that trailer without crying.
I loved your website. I loved the individual story. I thought it was really well done. So I enjoyed perusing it, frankly, and learning quite a lot that I didn't know.
Thank you. We just revamped that this year.
If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about Girls Matter, who might that be?
Honestly, I'm going to say Shania Twain, because that song.
And Twain, I was going to say, let's get her
song
on board.
Is so perfect.
Yeah.
And I know that she does a lot of philanthropic work herself. And what we're doing, I believe, is in alignment with what she does as well. And so I would love to have Shania Twain. She's also Canadian. We're Canadian. There's some beautiful synergy there. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, that's great. That's a great avenue. Well, we'll hashtag, and you never know what happens. And, hopefully she'll get wind of it.
I hope so.
And be on board, because it would be great. I think you should just start playing her song, and then somehow you'll get a letter to cease and desist. Be like, wait, we're a nonprofit. This is a great opportunity. Any last comments or thoughts?
I, again, want to thank you for this opportunity to be on your show and just the work that you do in highlighting smaller nonprofits, because of course there are so many out there doing incredible work, and they do get overshadowed by some of the bigger organizations. And our goal isn't to be big. Our goal is to be able to support more girls.
Right.
And we don't have to be big to do that. However, it does take financing. So the awareness that we create through being featured by organizations like Small and Gutsy allows more people to say, that resonates with me. I'd like to set up a monthly donation, or I'd like to sponsor a girl. And so thank you for that. And to anybody listening, thank you ahead of time for sharing this with 2 people like I asked, and helping spread the message. And if you've heard this and you're intrigued and you'd like more information, or you have recommendations of how you can support, or others that you can connect me with, or Shania Twain, email me at info@girlsmatter.ca. I would really love to hear from you.
Melissa, this was so delightful. I want to thank you. I think you have amazing energy, and you have put this together with 2 other folks just doing amazing work. And this is why I do what I do, is because of people like you, for what you have created and what you continue to create. And that 100% of this money goes to help the communities and the girls to really uplift
Yes.
them and their entire environment. And that says a lot. And you're our first Canadian organization. So a plug for Canada. And I want to also highlight that donations are tax deductible on the US side. I think that's really important for folks. And they should just reach out to you, and I'll have that information in the show notes. So thank you. It was a pleasure, truly a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Laura. I really appreciate it.
Please go to smallandgutsy.org to check out all of our episodes. And if you are so inclined, please purchase some Small and Gutsy merchandise, consider sponsoring an episode, or making a donation. Both are tax deductible to help keep us going and spotlighting these great organizations. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and do not reflect the position or views of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, my incredible board of directors, Brianna Carmichael, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Ari McCoy, Melissa Greitz, and Serena Rajabian, who believed in me and this project enough so to sign on and to support this effort, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. And thank you for listening. Together, we are spreading social impact, and you can help us. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to email me the name of any organization you feel would benefit from being interviewed. From small and gutsy to big with impact. I'm Laura Witkoff, and thanks for listening.